All right, I'm going to share with you today the design behind the backyard studio, the Light Ribbon Studio, as it came to be known. So this project came about because I was running a architecture firm at home, and just out of the spare bedroom, and along came my son, so I eventually needed to get out of that bedroom because he would need it. And so where was I to go? I could rent an office, and pay rent every month to go into there. Or I figured I could maybe just build something in the backyard and use that as an office. I wouldn't have to pay rent, so I could take the money that I would pay for, some generic office space in town. Could take that money, I could build this. And I figured if I could take 12 months of rent money and dedicate it to this, then this would be paid off in 1 year. So I did some research, and basically the numbers ended up being, the numbers ended up being 10 grand. I don't remember what the monthly rent was, but 10 grand. So I needed to build this little office space for 10 grand. Then the other thing going on was, I was renting our home. I had the landlord had a motorhome, a coach house with a motorhome in the bottom, and we lived up top. And then behind there, there was a small little spot. So if I was to draw, here's the little coach house. There was a driveway that kind of came around the side. My door in was right here. We kind of had some garden beds. There was a bit of actually the patio was kind of like this. We had some garden beds here. There was a shed here. So we're kind of looking at two buildings. There was a hedge and trees. Here was garden beds in there, door in, stairs down, a bit of a lawn. And so I spoke with my landlord. So where can I build something here somewhere? Because this was kind of my space-ish. And he was very generous. He said, yeah, sure, go ahead, as long as I can move my lawnmower in and out of here, and I can move my trailer in and out of there, and I can kind of pull in and turn around with a vehicle and all that stuff. So eventually what kind of happened was I had a clear space of kind of this. It ended up being very small. So how big was that? It ended up being, it was about 7 feet by 11 or 12 feet. So what ended up happening was I had kind of a 7 by 11 rectangle to work with. So quite small, 77 square feet total. At the end of the day, like, I was going to be working in this 12 months of the year. It had to be insulated, so you take some space off of that for wall thicknesses. And the space I really ended up kind of working with was 6 by 10. So this became a 60 square foot studio. And that was an interior space. And then once you built the walls up, and it ended up taking up my full 7 by 10 approximately. So that's how that happened. Now this space in here that I was working with, this is south. This is north here. So the sun, I'm living in Canada, the sun comes around like this. Wait, no, how was this? I'm looking at this wrong, sorry. This was... let's do the... Alright, north was here. Yeah, this is making more sense. Okay, so north is here. North is up. So the sun is doing this. I had really good morning views that way. That's why I'm remembering this. So morning views were that way. This was east. I was totally obscured this way. This was west by these big trees. And the view this way here was trees as well. Mostly. There was a neighbor's house. There was a neighbor's house kind of over here. But that was pretty far away. It was pretty private space in here. So what I ended up doing was this studio in large part started with views. If I was to look this way, I would like the view up here, up towards trees. That was nice. But down here, you're just looking at cars. I parked my car here. My landlord would be pulling in and out. View this way, kind of garbage. I'm looking at an open shed here. I'm looking at a lawnmower, and just like scrap wood. View this way, super nice. Morning sunshine. I was working, starting quite early in the mornings. Morning sunshine, looking at my gardens. I could see my family entering and exiting. That was great. So what this studio ended up being, I'm drawing this again. Okay, so here's north. North is up. This studio largely ended up being, I'm going to look this way. That's at eye level. And then everything other than that, these are fine to look up and out. But there's nothing really to look at eye level. Here I was against the house, but the sunshine would reflect off and come in. So here as well, looking kind of up is fine to get some light in. Now, the other component of this, if I'm to look at, to kind of cut through and look this way, so that means I've got my landlord's shed in my house, or coach house. The big coach house where I was living on the second floor is right here. Here's the ground. Sunshine's doing that. My landlord said, okay, just one constraint, please, is slope the roof away from the coach house, because rainy climate, slope the roof away so all the water would run off away from the coach house. So fair enough. That's what we did. So already now you can kind of see, like, I had something like this where you can look this way. This was kind of the logical point of entry. Actually, it's this way. No, it was out. You swing out. It was too small. 60 square feet. 6 feet here. 10 feet this way. It was too small to swing a door in, so I swung the door out. And then it swung this way. Yes, because I came from here. Swung this way. Obviously, you can tell it's been a while since I designed this. I'm just kind of recapping it now for you. So, the door swung out. I would look this way, and all the views everywhere else were just up. I wanted to have lots of light because I love sunlight. I want to not turn the lights on if I at all possibly can. So this very much ended up being kind of a box with a lid that was lifted and to slope rainwater off and allow an open perimeter all around it. So this ended up being, with such a small building and a few major constraints, it was really quite a simple form exercise to end up with okay, here's your window out, here's your door. So basically a box. And put a lid on there, slope it, to pull in light at the top, view out one way, and sloping it this way, I could shade much of the south sun. So the overhang on this was calibrated in such a way that if here's a section again through here, was that light at 45 degrees, which where I am, it's kind of like March 21st and between March 21st and September 21st, the sun is at an angle above 45 degrees, and it's also the hottest at that time of year. It's like late spring through summer. That hot sun would be shaded by the roof overhang. The sun coming in the western side was shaded by these trees. I had these really, really large trees there that were, these guys here were created essentially a wall for the western sun. So really I was shading the south, I was already blocked from the west, and I was accepting the east morning light. So I had a very simple, right away, like kind of just given to me out of pure constraint. I had in plan six foot inside, 10 feet inside, window here. So I had these dimensions, the 6 and the 10. We build out a dimensional lumber here. So after that, I decided, okay, what's handy for me as an architect when I'm designing, it's handy for me to actually see the construction of how things get built around here. And here, it's a lot of light wood frame. So we use 2x4 lumber, or 2x6, or 2x8, 2x10. It's wood. Wood studs for walls, wood joists for floors, joists for roofs. Sometimes you get these, usually you get kind of eye joists for floors or roofs. But yeah, so that's what would be handy for me to actually see in my space as I'm designing, is to see the construction, see the materials that the buildings I'm designing are going to be built with for the most part. So I thought, okay, I'll expose that structure. I'll bring it all to the inside, and usually it's kind of like a 2-foot bay. So what was I here? It was a 6, and then it was a 10. So it was like kind of 3 bays and 5 bays of structure. So it ended up being like that, and like this. Except I wanted to pull off the corners. If I was looking up and out, I wanted to pull off the corners and I wanted to keep this perimeter as clear as possible, so it would feel like this lid was really lifted off. So what I did was I took my 6x10 box. I did something that was interesting, but ended up making it harder to build. I pulled the structure 1 foot off the corners. So then ended up basically, so 1 foot off of 6. I had 4 feet here, so it was a stud in the middle, stud there. And this was 8 feet from outside stud to outside stud. So it was actually 4 bays, 5 studs total. Middle, that one, 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 that one. So it was kind of like this internal skeleton. And if there's a door here, this one got removed, and I had a beam above. So what this is in effect was doing was, like, I had this skeleton of exposed studs that would be wrapped in an insulated skin with a just fully transparent window above. The studs would continue past, and then the window would continue behind. There would be no frames, and that was where the light ribbon name came from. So this in plan was very simple. It was just, you have a door, you walk in. I had a desk to sit at. I had a desk to stand at. and the desk to stand at. I wanted to incentivize getting up, standing while I worked, sketching while I stood, model making while I stood, and to incentivize that, I put that one by the window so I could see out while I did it, whereas my computer tasks over here were much more focused, zeroed in, so I had no window there. It was just I had my walls with books, and no distractions, just zeroed in on my screen, my keyboard, and I just plugged away. And then I would turn around, get out of my chair, walk, just turn around literally. And my model making stuff was all here. My sketching stuff was all here. So that was, in general, that's the idea. This very much became a design that was resolved, say, in section, not so much plan. It was how do we make this really simple space appealing to be in. And so that largely came down to lifting the roof off, expressing that structure with very small, spindly sticks holding up a sloping plane, which I want it to feel very light. And then insulating, this is insulated and exposed. So how to make this a nice space. That was the main, I guess, design challenge. So I will draw that over again here. Sloping roof. I wanted this to feel light inside. It's a small space. Can't say that enough. Like, it was a very, very small space. I wanted it to feel light and airy, so thus the just clear perimeter around the top, to kind of breathe a bit. But then the weight of the structure, I felt, was a very big part of that. So I minimized the weight of this, of all the structure holding it up. The pieces of wood were as small as possible. There were no like cross members between them. They were all braced by just very careful stuff around the edges. And this roof in particular became quite important to feel light. So how do you do that? I eroded the edges of it. So this roof became, if I was to kind of blow this up in detail, it was a steel, a corrugated steel on the outside, and then corrugated steel, because it's got this wavy profile, it can actually cantilever itself. It can support its own weight. So I just cantilevered that out all by itself for the full overhang here. So that was 12 inches, and supported it as far back as I felt comfortable. With my snow load, I felt like 12 inches is like, this did not sag at all with a 12-inch supporting itself over 12 inches, even after ice and snow and all that stuff. So I supported it 12 inches back so that this could just support itself and be a very, very thin. This is less than 1 inch thick here, less than 25 millimeters. So I pulled the structure back from that, and then actually kind of made this was the strapping underneath the steel. The main roof structure below that kind of did this. It had this kind of profile so that when you're looking at it, you were seeing this little bit, this little bit, this little bit, all separated and pulled apart from each other, so it just felt much more lightweight. It was not a big chunk of like heavy roof. No, it was pulled apart, so it felt way more lightweight. Then the glass, very, very thin, that would sit on this heavy box of just a wood box. So then there was a contrast between my kind of heavy wood box on the bottom and this really delicate roof off of that. And the delicate roof was pulled off. The structure was pulled off of this heavy wood box. The structure was pulled off of that and just went up very lightly. To support. This was all insulated. This was all insulated. So it was warm all year round. So that was a major part of it. One of the complicating bits, though, when I exposed all this structure was that, yeah, you have all these studs at the perimeter of your desk. So that could have been a negative, but good design takes a negative and makes it a positive. So like you just use it. Don't fight the constraint, just use it. So I had these studs. I had my shell. Give me a sec here. I'm just going to draw this out in somewhat scale. Or at least proportion. Get the proportions right. Whoa. All right. Okay, so proportionally that isn't quite there. It's a little skewed, but all right. So I had these posts, tiny little, like they're 1.5 by 3.5 inches. So what I did, instead of just trying to notch around them everywhere, basically what I did was take my desk and I built my desk like this. And then I recessed this edge. This became desk, trough, wall. And in this trough, I put cups with pencils and pens, and I put like cords or my stapler or it essentially became like a utility trough. I ran my cords in here, so I didn't have any cords cluttering on my desk. And then above, I used these as structure to create bookshelf, bookshelf, open corner to put a plan. And then same thing over here, a bookshelf along the edge. No bookshelf here. No bookshelf there. This was my desk, my standing desk. So here again, I had cups. Cups with pencils, cups with pens, cups with knives to make models with, cups with everything, rulers. It actually ended up being really quite nice. I'd kind of color coded my pencils in here, so it became a color gradient as you went along, and it was quite. This little detail ended up being one of my favorites of the whole project. Just this little kind of trough around the edge where I could sink a cup into there and have stuff in it, and it was just a writing surface. It made something unique, and it made something very deliberate for all the clutter that would normally be annoying. So there you have it. I guess there were some other elements to the design. Obviously there were many elements, but I wanted it to be portable. I was renting. I wanted it to be portable, so I put wheels on the bottom. I lifted it up and I put wheels. And I ended up actually moving this when I did move. And I moved the studio. I moved it twice. Moved it to my new house, and then I moved it when I sold my studio when I didn't need it anymore. So this ended up being a great little detail. The door, this being a very defined, heavy box with the delicate roof above there, I made the door match the wood. This was all clad in wood, and then I clad the door as well, so the door just blended in to the box. What else? Oh, I did the inside was all wood textures. It was plywood. I think I did this wall out of OSB with this oriented strand board. Not very pretty material, but I wanted to at least just see the look. As I was designing, I wanted to see these materials. So I had one wall in OSB, and all the other ones were kind of a nicer plywood. Floor, desk, walls, underside of the roof. It was all plywood. This was the studs were wood. It ended up being just a wood box inside, which was an incredibly important decision because it felt so warm in winter. It was just a really comfortable space. It smelled good. It was not an afterthought. It was deliberate, but the benefits were more than I even expected. I guess the biggest negative of a space this small was I would walk in, and it rains a lot in the Lower Mainland, in the Fraser Valley in British Columbia where I live. It rains a lot, so I'd come in with wet shoes, and I'd end up kind of having I'd track some moisture in. That was the biggest thing. So what did I end up doing? I had a little spot here where I would put my shoes, and I had office slippers inside here, and that ended up solving that little issue. But I think if I could have done it again, I would have extended this a little bit further to create a bit of more of a covering, because the door swung out. Bit more of a covering, bit more of a reprieve from the rain as you're trying to open that door. So I designed that overhang based on sunlight, but I should have designed it even more based on rain. But all in all, I'll link the videos of the final space in the description below, and you can check it out. Thanks.